I think I had a sort of a leg up because I grew up in a rural area, and I spent a lot of time outside since I was a little kid. I think I realized that that's something that I always wanted to do. Now more than ever, with population increase, with, sprawl happening all across the world, it's a relevant field now more than ever. And it's, we have people saying all the time, we have brilliant minds needed in like the medical field and curing cancer and figuring out how to go to the moon. We already figured that out. Go to Mars, I guess. But I don't think that wildlife biology is any less important. My name is Grace Lehinger-Winden. I'm from Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and I am a Fisheries, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology student at the University of Minnesota. So FWCB is the shortened version of it, and it leads to a lot of careers. My focus is on wildlife biology, and that can lead to careers in independent research, like nonprofit research. It can lead to things like wildlife management positions, which is a lot of what it leads to, which is what I hope to be doing in the future, as well as positions as a wildlife biologist at state and federal agencies like the National Park Service. I found out about this because I had done a lot of hiking at the Lake Elmo Park Preserve, and I was wondering if there were any opportunities for an internship in the area. There wasn't a job posting or anything, but I reached out to the owner of the Sally Manzara Interpretive Nature Center, and he said that it would really be open to anything I wanted to do, so I chose to do a mammal survey. Basically, a mammal survey is just that, it's surveying mammals. So I go out and I look for any mammals that live here in the park. I chose to do it with a combination of trail cameras and track plates. I go out there and I will choose a location based on what animal I'm trying to survey for. So I have different setups for carnivores, different setups for omnivores and herbivores, as well as the size of the mammal. And I'll set up either a trail camera, and I usually do this before I set up a track plate, just to identify if this is a good area to, lug the track plate out to and set up. And I'll bait that with either a food lure or a scent lure, sometimes a combination of both, as well as a visual lure, just to try to cover all my bases. With those methods, I chose them because they provide concrete evidence of the animals by tracks and photos and videos, which the Nature Center can then use for educational material. What I would like to find is a good diversity and abundance of species in every single one of those habitats. We have wetland, the lakes and around them, as well as the restored prairie, as well as the woodland. And if I don't find that might suggest that something's wrong, something needs to be adapted or done in order to help there be more species diversity. An example of that I've already found is that the lakes in the area, especially Sunfish Lake, are kind of erratically changing water levels. So this year, the water level is several feet higher than it usually is, which is disruptful for a lot of animals that would live there, like otters, muskrats that used to be quite common around the lakes. And then in the prairie, I would expect to find the 13-line ground squirrels, as well as some probably field mice. I wouldn't be surprised to find animals like badgers, skunks. It's pushing some species north, like moose. The fact that it's getting warmer kind of reduces their ability to thrive. It's also changing a lot of the sort of ecological makeup of Minnesota. And so what Minnesota used to be, of course, thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, was mostly dry mesic prairie. And what we're seeing now is what we've been used to is a combination of a little bit of prairie, but mostly hardwood and even more so conifer forest, which is receding and will continue receding with warming temperatures, which drives some of our species, our native species that we'd be used to finding here, out of the state, while bringing more species into the state from the southern region. Like things like turkeys, I'm sure you see a lot of turkeys, are becoming more and more common here. And that's part of the reason. Everything's moving north. As well as things like plants and insects that require freezing temperatures under a certain threshold for a certain amount of time during the winter time. Mild winters like we've been having are super detrimental to their survival, so that some plant species may not thrive. Some pest species that eat those plants, destroy those plants, may thrive even more, creating a sort of imbalance. As well as, parasites like ticks. Usually a deep frost would kill a lot of them off, but as we've seen this last year with our mild winter, there's been a pretty large resurgence of ticks all over the state, which I don't think anyone wants, aside from the possums maybe. There are a lot of opportunities. They can volunteer for nonprofit agencies. That's really important. They can visit their state parks, preserves, and whatnot, and by buying things like park passes, that helps to fund conservation. But one of the largest contributors to funding conservation, actually, especially in the state of Minnesota, is gull hunting and fishing, because through the state, a lot of the funds that are raised through things like selling permits every year go right back into funding conservation. And most of that conservation is geared towards game species and waterfowl species. Not only are they important, when you fund conservation for those species, it creates sort of an umbrella of protection, because if you're protecting the habitat for one species, of course, there are how many more living in that same habitat as that one species. And so that's a really important way that I think that most people actually already participate in that they don't know about, but yeah. Science doesn't have to be intimidating. I think that's something that maybe scares people off from jobs like being a wildlife biologist, because of course you get to be out in the field like I'm doing every day, and maybe even interact with wildlife. There's also, there's science being done, there's analysis, and there's math. But honestly, my suggestion would be get out there, you can volunteer, get experience, even if it's not super relevant to maybe what you want to be doing, because any experience is good experience. And then something really important, I think, is to talk to people that you know or that you meet that are already in a field that's really important to you. So people that already work in conservation, because they're going to have a lot of insight for you. Connections are really important. It can help you find out exactly what you want to get into, and it can be competitive, especially in conservation and wildlife biology. It's a competitive field, but I think it's really worth it. And I think it's really important to be doing work like I'm doing here, because environmental education is one of the most important things that you can give to the next generation, or even to this generation or the previous generation that maybe haven't had a lot of exposure to it. I think that it's our job to be knowledgeable about how to coexist with wildlife, and also to help negate, negative anthropogenic effects on wildlife, because we're the ones inflicting it. It's really important to be able to maintain ecological balance everywhere, because as we've seen, life really isn't sustainable without it. So I think it's good to start early with environmental education. You hear this all the time, but get outside and encourage other people to do it as well, and pursue maybe a career in wildlife biology. Who knows? Like I said, with population increase, with, sprawl happening all across the world, it's a relevant field. We have people saying all the time, we have brilliant minds needed in like the medical field and curing cancer and figuring out how to go to the moon. We already figured that out. Go to Mars, I guess. But I don't think that wildlife biology is any less important as a field to work in. So yeah, we need brilliant minds here too. There it is. A boring day in the life of Grace's Mammal Survey.